Well, good afternoon, everyone. Now, let me state at the outset of my speech, sir, that I have no particular love for politicians, especially left-wing politicians, as they become more and more radical in their left-wing views. This afternoon, I will be speaking about a man that I have greatly admired. Now, given my opening statement about politicians, it may come as a surprise that I will not only be speaking about a politician, but I'll be speaking about a politician from a left-wing political party. Now, this man was not your typical left-wing politician. In fact, he wasn't even your typical politician. His spirit of service for the city that he served made him one of the most popular men ever to serve in political office. Now, it could be argued that he made the greatest contribution of any politician to the quality of life that most of us in this room enjoy today. He served as Lord Mayor of Brisbane for 14 years, from 1961 to 1975, and he was the man who truly modernised the city of Brisbane. Today I'll be speaking about former Brisbane Lord Mayor Clem Jones. Now, Clem Jones was born in 1918 in Ipswich. In business, he did so well that he was able to retire financially secure at age 37. Now, he was driven by a desire to improve the city that he loved. Now, fate or providence stepped in when he was offered a Fulbright scholarship in local government studies with UCLA in the United States, where he worked in 36 cities over a course of 36 months. Now, radio broadcaster Hayden Sargent said of Clem Jones, "He wasn't a professional politician. He was just one of those human beings who loves doing things and getting things done, has visions about the city, and thought that the best place to do that was as Lord Mayor." Now, Clem Jones was elected Lord Mayor in 1961 and would continue to serve as Lord Mayor for another 14 years when he would retire from public office. Now, it is well known that Clem Jones never took a mayoral salary at any time during his 15 years of service in that role. Now, like the Apostle Paul, even though he had the right to a salary, he took a higher road so that no one could accuse him of being in the job for the money. Now, Clem did say that he arranged a banked overdraft with a colleague who worked for the Commonwealth Bank to help cover living expenses, which continued to grow the longer that he was in office. Now, that said, he did so well in his latter years that his personal wealth was estimated at about $200 million when he died. Now, in 1961, Brisbane was a city with no town planning, over 2,000 kilometres of unsealed residential roads and limited water supply. And fewer than 40% of houses were sewered when he became Lord Mayor, relying instead on outhouses or septic tanks. Now, he was determined to get rid of the backyard thunderboxes. Now, there was opposition to the move to sewer Brisbane, with some engineers questioning whether if it could be done, considering how hilly that Brisbane was. They said we didn't have enough water supply, so Clem increased the water supply. He took his case to the people and told them if you want the city to be sewered, that you need to be prepared to pay extra to have that done, and the people were prepared to do so. Now, Brisbane today is the most sewered city in the world at 99.8%. Now, former Prime Minister Gough Whitlam said that by the time that he retired from office, that he left the city fully flushed. Now, he was just as diligent when it came to upgrading Brisbane's residential roads, sealing most of the 2,000 kilometres of unsealed residential roads in Brisbane. Now, unlike previous administrations, Clem Jones was prepared to borrow to build infrastructure. Now, he reasoned that infrastructure was needed now, and not just today's tax ratepayers, but future generations would benefit from it, so the costs should be spread over the generations. Now, here is a picture of New York in the 1930s. Now, fast forward 20 years. Here is a picture of Brisbane in the 1950s. Now, the City Hall is overwhelmingly the tallest building in the city. Now you can see why Brisbane was called a big country town. Now Clem Jones lifted the height restrictions imposed by previous councils, leading to Brisbane's first true skyscrapers being built. Now the first of those was the Pearl Insurance Building, today's A&L building, in 1965 at 16 stories, followed by a couple of other insurance buildings at 17 and 20 stories in the next couple of years. Now throughout the 1960s and 1970s, Clem Jones successfully led the council to develop a town plan, purchase city properties to build underground car parks, which were then topped by public parks such as King George Square. In the suburbs, land was acquired for sporting fields and parklands such as the Mount Coot-tha Botanic Gardens. Now his council built 15 Olympic public swimming pools and around 20 public libraries. Now there was a regular radio session on 4BK with Clem Jones where callers could ring in to discuss local issues. Now Hayden Sargent said of Clem, people would think he had the most fantastic memory, but it showed his enthusiasm, and he actually did drive around the streets looking at what needed to be done. Now Clem Jones said that every officer in the council would be listening in and would make sure if we said something was going to get fixed, that we'd indeed get it fixed. Now the one decision that he got the most heat about was his decision to shut down the tram system in 1969. Now Brisbane's narrow inner city roads would have choked with the ever-increasing number of cars had the trams been running today. As someone who never got to ride the trams, I wish at least one line was kept like the Glenelg line in Adelaide. Now much of the decision was brought about by the state government's decision to replace Victoria Bridge in 1970 without the capacity to run trams. This was the only tram crossing over the Brisbane River. Now ironically, the planned Brisbane Metro light rail will cross over the Victoria Bridge, which will inconveniently for some of us be converted to a green bridge. Now in 1973, the state government changed the boundaries for the council wards, yet Clem won a landslide victory of 20 wards to 1. In 1974, Clem Jones had to deal with one of the greatest natural disasters in Brisbane's history, the Australia Day floods. Now, against the advice of engineers, he made the courageous decision to not open the gates of Somerset Dam, which was nearing capacity, to allow for the floodwaters to go down quicker in Brisbane. In 1974, he was persuaded to run for the federal seat of Griffith, but lost because of his own popularity, would you believe? Electors were bombarded with leaflets that said, "You can't afford to lose him." And they decided that they wanted him to stay at the local level rather than move off to Canberra. Now, Clem Jones promoted Brisbane to host the Commonwealth Games. Now, his second bid in 1974 was successful for the Commonwealth Games that were a huge shot in the arm for Brisbane in 1982. Now, Clem was a cricket tragic, and he was heavily involved in Queensland cricket. Now, in his last year, would you believe, as Lord Mayor, he was also curator at the Gabba Cricket Ground and prepared the test wicket for the 1974 test, where Lillian Thompson first came together and creamed England and the Ashes. Now, following his hugely successful term as Lord Mayor, he was recruited with the help with rebuilding Darwin after Cyclone Tracy destroyed it on Christmas Day in 1975. And in true Clem Jones form, he completed a 5-year building program in 3 years. Now, he sailed a raft made of 12,000 beer cans, the Can Tiki, with 2 mates from Darwin to Singapore in 1976 to announce to the world that Darwin was back in business. Now, his wife Sylvia said it took 10 years off his life. Now, Clem Jones was a great supporter of charities in both his public and private lives. He was the driving force behind the Clem Jones Sports Centre at Carina. And he restored a hostel at Bulimba that bears his name for helping to feed the poor and homeless And he was also a big supporter of food bank that feeds up to 40,000 people a year. Now, some have said that he did more since he supposedly retired than he did before. Now, a fitting tribute to Clem Jones, who was big on building infrastructure, is the Clem Jones Tunnel that under the Brisbane River that was named after him. Clem Jones died of a stroke in 2007 and is widely regarded on both sides of politics as the greatest Lord Mayor that Brisbane has ever had. Now, in the kingdom of God, we are told that some of us will be given 5 cities or 10 cities to rule. And Clem Jones' wonderful example of service and developing the city that he so deeply loved is a great example that we're going to all learn from. Thank you.